Hello and welcome to another session of our lecture Management and Leadership. Having stopped at the chapter 12, which is dealing with the subject Managing Change and Innovation. We talked about the diffusion of innovations, and what you see on the slide is a very lovely and fitting image and analogy to what is happening when you are innovating, or how innovation processes usually work. So this metaphor is about penguins, and the penguins are standing on an ice shelf. So in the first phase, therefore, is called the penguin phase. And in this phase, these penguins are standing on an ice shelf and they're all hungry for fish. But they are also a bit anxious because they don't know whether there are orcas, killer whales, around, and whether they are subject to be killed by an orca. So at one moment in time, some penguin is so courageous and so hungry, he jumps into the water first. And what happens to the others? The others are not doing anything, they're just watching him. First look what the others are doing. So they're watching him whether he's killed or not. Let's assume he's not killed, which is symbolizing that the innovation is successful. And what is happening in the second phase then? What are all the penguins doing? They are following the leader. So you have the second phase being called the fast-selling item phase. So after the others have seen that the innovation is successful, they are following the leader. And that is called fast-selling item phase, because a product which was once an innovation soon becomes a commodity. So, and you can look at every kind of product. For example, in 2011, Apple had the idea of introducing Siri as a function to iOS, to the iPhone. And after it was, first, what were the others doing? Samsung, Microsoft, and all the others, and Google with the Android, they were all looking at Apple and say, okay, who wants intelligent digital assistant, right, in the phone? And after the Siri was successful and the customers liked it to talk to the phone, everybody was following Apple. So that is how innovations work. So the companies and organizations being represented by the penguins, they are hesitant to try out new things because, you remember, 80% of all innovations do fail. But once they decided to innovate, to jump into the water because there's no choice, for example, because the world is changing and the innovation is successful, others are following and adopting to that trend, to that innovation. Let's assume the penguin jumps into the water first and he's being killed by an orca. So the innovation fails. It's not a big success. What happens? Nobody's, of course, following. So that is a very lovely, a very nice image I'm always using in my keynotes and over again all around the world to explain the theory of innovation and how it practically works. What is entrepreneurship? Because entrepreneurship is closely connected to innovation management. Entrepreneurship is the process of starting a new business, generally in response to market opportunities that the market is externally delivering upon us. Like we're seeing now in Corona times, there's also a great opportunity to develop new kind of businesses, offering solutions to the challenges we are facing. And entrepreneurial ventures are organizations that pursue those opportunities, and they are characterized by innovative practices, innovative ways of working. And basically what they want to do, they want to grow as quickly as possible because the market is growing. This is uncontested market space. And what do they have to do? Entrepreneurs must address 4 key areas, 4 key steps as they start and manage their ventures. First, explore the entrepreneurial context. So how is the macro environment like? You have to look at the macro environment and identify opportunities and possible sustainable competitive advantages. So that is the second step. Then you start off the venture. You kick off the joint venture probably as well if you are going together with another company, and you need to manage the corporation. That is basically, of course, the process that is involved when setting up a new business. But we also have the claim and this image of entrepreneurship when it comes to organizations themselves, because what they're looking for, they are not looking for employees, but they're looking for intrapreneurs. Intrapreneurs, not entrepreneurs, but intrapreneurs. They're looking for entrepreneurs within the organization. I think I was emphasizing this term before. So that is very, very important. Big organizations should strive towards nurturing change or climate of innovation. And if you want to do that, you have to reward risk, and you have to also nurture and foster entrepreneurial thinking inside the organization. So for that purpose, you need employees who are able and willing to think as entrepreneurs within the organization. Okay. According to management thinker Peter Drucker, we are living, or we were living, but this is more valid than it ever was before. We are living in an age of discontinuity, he calls it. And you remember the term I was copying, basically. I was using the term VUCA, which is coming from the US military. We are living in a world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So that is basically what Drucker was foreseeing very early on. And in this world of discontinuity, in this VUCA world, entrepreneurs could find significant opportunities to create and transform organizations, but only if they are willing to get ahead of societal changes, because you have to be proactive and not reactive. And in this context, I'm always quoting the great Wayne Gretzky. He was an NHL all-time player, and he said, a good player skates to where the puck is. A great player skates to where the puck is going to be. And because he was asked why he became such a great star in the NHL, and he said, I skate where the puck is going to be, I don't skate where the puck is. And that applies to organizations and enterprises alike. And the best way to predict the future, Drucker says, is to invent it, to shape it, right? And discontinuities provided gaps in society that could be filled with innovation and creativity. And it was always like that, and it will always be like that. But of course, as we've seen when we talked about the Hofstede criteria, when it comes to national culture, you remember uncertainty avoidance was one, and the uncertainty avoidance index is very strong in some countries, for example, in the Arab world, but also in Germany, it is very strong. So members in the organization are resistant towards change because change is a threat to the status quo, and people feel uncomfortable with that. So it is easily said to say, okay, we need to change, we have a VUCA world, we are adaptive to change, but in reality, few companies are doing that. And that is the issue. Even startups who are once innovative and they adapt to a changing business environment, they fail to continuously adapt. Why? Because they become successful, they become fed up penguins, so to say, and they become complacent, and they fail to adapt to a changing business environment. One example is BlackBerry. BlackBerry was, I mentioned that before, was the world market leader and the innovator when it comes to the push mail notification. And then this function was being copied by the competitors, and BlackBerry was not adapting to the market anymore, and they overslept the smartphone trend, and in 2016 officially their market share dropped to 0%. a fellow colleague of mine, a very, very highly respected professor. Unfortunately, he died a couple of weeks ago. Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor. And Professor Christensen was inventing the term disruption. And disruption, it says in the title, it is a process whereby a smaller company with fewer resources is able to successfully challenge an established corporation. And he differentiates between incumbents and new market entrants. Incumbents are companies focusing on improving their products and services for their most demanding customers. So these are the corporations that are very well situated, located in terms of market share in their branch, in their niche, and they're focusing on customer satisfaction, which is not bad. However, they overlook new impulses coming from the market, and these are picked up by so-called new market entrants. They begin to successfully target overlooked segments, new business models. They're coming out with new kind of business models, and they gain a foothold in the market by delivering more suitable functionality, usually at a lower price. And then they move up market. They professionalize their performance and their offerings, and suddenly mainstream customers are changing from incumbents, being inclined to incumbents, to new market entrants. So, and that is what disruption describes. It is said on the slide here. That is a slide coming from Clayton Christensen himself. So, sustaining innovations here. This is the road that the traditional companies are pursuing. They're successful. Performance that customers can utilize or absorb, and this is the way that traditional companies are moving. But what is happening is that new entrants are coming up with less functionality product at a lower price, and then it is a new kind of a business model. For example, let's take Netflix. Netflix disrupted the market for video rental. For example, in the past, Blockbuster, Google Blockbuster was a big retail chain in the United States, actually the biggest in the United States. And this Blockbuster video rental chain was renting videos to thousands and thousands of customers. But then Netflix came along and said, okay, we have a new kind of business models. You don't physically need to enter any kind of retail, but you can rent the movie online and you stream it to your device, whether it's a computer or a laptop, a mobile phone or a TV, it doesn't make any difference. So it is a new kind of business model, and they offered the streaming as a subscription model. There was no subscription to videos before. As a subscription model, they offered that, and it was very successful. And interestingly, if you do a little bit of research on that, and you research Netflix and just type in Netflix and Blockbuster, you can see that Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they said, oh no, Netflix, it's not a very sustainable business. We don't believe in the success story of Netflix, so they refused to take over Netflix, and that was the beginning of their death, basically, because now Blockbuster is out of the market, as we all know, and that is a typical process of disruption here. Some many slides. Now, waves of digital disruption. It's a nice slide here from Schotter and van Petegem. In 1995, music industry was disrupted. Photography, video rental. I was just pinpointing at the example of Blockbuster. Photography is another one because in 1995 there were still a lot of industry was around the the camera and the traditional camera and the films coming from Fujifilm and coming from Kodak. But then as digital photography advanced, nobody wanted to buy films anymore. And what happened was an interesting story. Kodak died, so the company is no longer resistant in its industry, but Fuji didn't die. Fuji reinvented themselves. They were adapting to a new market, and they are now one of the leaders in imagery when it comes to medical device technology. That is interesting. In 2010, print media, TV, travel, HR, etc., etc., it continues like that. So the logic is that not too far from now, maybe by the year 2020, end of 2020, or end of next year, or in 2 years' time, every kind of market is subject to disruption, so it can be disrupted in the future. So there's no safe haven anymore. Okay, yes. This is just an example of branches and businesses that have been disrupted so far. Somewhere on the slide before: newspapers, magazines, books, music, videos, retail, and travel. So they all were disrupted. Same is happening to the book industry. For example, if you're following me on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, you've seen that I've published a lot of books and latest editions of recent books on social media and marketing management and strategy, etc., etc. And in the past, I think I have it on the next slide. Yes, it is also in the book industry. There's also a change when it comes to paradigm. In the past, it was the traditional way, the traditional value chain was that the author is writing a book and editing a manuscript, and then this manuscript, this book, has been sent to a publisher, and the publisher is publishing the book, and the publisher is selling the book through the retail, so through Barnes and Nobles or Thalia, whatever, to the end customer. Now, but disruption also means in some branches disintermediation. Disintermediation means you kick out one intermediary, so one person, one stakeholder sitting between the producer, the manufacturer, and the end customer, which is who's lacking. You see, Penguin is lacking. Penguin books is lacking. I didn't kill Penguin books, but in today's world, an author can write a book, like in the past, and he or she can directly publish the book through Kindle Direct Publishing and sell via Amazon. So there is no publisher anymore. So the author publishes the book himself through Amazon. He sells to the end customer. Not only to the e-customer, but also as a print-on-demand book. Now, that is a way of disruption, because in the past, the publisher printed, I don't know, 1,000 copies of a book or 3,000 copies of a book, and then they waited for the book to be sold. And it took some while to do new edition. Now, if a book is not printed 3,000 times or 2,000 times, so no book is printed. But if you go to the Amazon and you look for my books and you want to order a paperback, in this moment in time you order it, it's being printed in Poland or wherever by Amazon Fulfillment, and then the next day you have it shipped to your home. So it's print on demand. So there's no storage which is needed by Amazon to store 1,000 books. So it's a completely new process. And of course, for the author, the margin, the royalty is higher than in the traditional value chain model. And this is a very nice and very, very powerful example, again, also of disruption. What was the implication for the newspaper industry? So many long-standing daily newspapers have died, but the industry hasn't. It has, however, changed, and it will continue to change. But we will stop printing the New York Times someday in the future date to be delivered. That is coming from the chairman and publisher of the New York Times, which is the most prestigious newspaper on the planet. What is currently being disrupted or under disruption? It's financial services. I explain that again. For example, in the past, it was the case that you go to your bank to collect some money, or to pay money into your bank account, or to do, I don't know, whatever, to transfer money, whatever you do, or to buy shares, or to talk to somebody giving you financial advice when it comes to the stock market, etc., etc. But now there's no need to do that. When have you been last to your bank, right? Probably years ago. Now financial services can be done digitally. So the banking industry is disrupted. Telecommunications, think about what we are doing here. Think about Zoom, think about Skype, for example. In the past, it was a very valuable business model for Deutsche Telekom, AT&T and others to charge people for making landline phone calls. Government, transportation, agriculture, healthcare, it's a very big topic, but also buildings management. So all, like I said, all businesses will be subject to disruption. Now, what is the difference between traditional and disruptive marketing? I'm a marketing guy, and marketing is about focusing on the customer, on the market, and on the customer's needs and wants and problems, and solve their problems innovatively and profitably. Traditional marketing was happening like that. Companies develop products and services and then implement strategies to help attract new customers to their businesses. But disruptive marketing is a new kind of thinking. It's more of a business model than a marketing approach. And what is the goal of a disruptive company? Actually, it has two goals, two main goals. Design its product or service to match the demand of an emerging market, or reshape an existing product or service to meet the demand of customers unsatisfied by the current offering. And that is basically what disruption is about, or disruptive marketing is about. So it challenges conventional thinking in an existing market, and it develops a new market or redefines a market. Airbnb redefined the market for accommodation. Uber redefined the market for taxi transportation. Disruptive marketing helps to unlock new value by creating new playing grounds, new playing fields. Spotify is an example. I was referring to that before. Netflix, I was referring to that before. So these are very, very important examples. So powerful forces cause companies to target market segments that are irrelevant. Why are companies targeting irrelevant market segments? Because they are not so sure why customers are buying certain kind of products. That is a chart being done by Christensen. Now, the basic background is coming from 𝗬𝗂𝘁 again, and 𝗬𝗂𝘁 has a very nice quote, and he said, "The customer rarely buys what the company thinks it's selling." What does it mean? And there is a nice example from Professor Clayton Christensen himself. And he was writing in this book, The Innovator's Dilemma, about soft drinks, about this milkshakes. These milkshakes were being sold at a fast food retailer. And the traditional marketing approach was, first, they wanted to increase the sales of the milkshake. And what they did was they segmented the market according to the product and demographics of a typical consumer. So they said the typical consumer of the milkshake is being aged, I don't know, 20 to 49. He's male and earning that much of a salary, etc., etc. And then they were asking several hundreds of these people from this target group, So they did a customer survey, and the target group was asked to list the characteristics of the perfect milkshake. So how do you want the milkshake to be? Shall it be more sweet, or shall it be whatever, more fruity, etc., etc.? And then people responded. And what the company did was, in the third step, it was modifying the product. So they changed the milkshake according to the customer survey. But the result was the sales didn't improve. Why? Because the customer is unaware of what they want. And that is a lovely quote. I'm always referring to that from the great Henry Ford. If I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses, but not for cars. What does it mean? Watching consumers to identify what job they wanted to be done leads to disruptive marketing. And that is actually the name of a book by Christensen. So he wrote several books. One is The Innovator's Dilemma, and then he also wrote a book called Jobs to be Done. And that is looking at the problem or at the challenges that the customer faces. So the job was, what is the typical customer of the retail chain, of this fast food chain? What is he after? They are facing a long and boring commute when they go to work, and they need something on the way to make the drive more interesting. They are actually not hungry, but usually they would be by 10 a.m. and they want to consume something now to stave off hunger until noontime. So they don't want to eat at 11 or at 10 a.m. Again, they don't want to be hungry. And they're facing constraints. They're in a hurry. They're wearing work clothes, so suits, for example, and they only have one free hand. And the competing products were bagels, bananas, and donuts. So what Christensen did was, in his consulting work here, when it comes to the milkshake, not a big deal, but he was not focusing on product improvement, but he was focusing on the job which the customer wants the milkshakes to be done. And improvements to get the job done was thicker milkshake. So they just make the consistency of the milkshake, they make it thicker. Why? Because then it takes longer to consume. Because the challenge was not hungry, but would be by 10 a.m. So if the milkshake lasts longer, you need longer time to consume, so it starves hunger longer off. And they add tiny chunks of fruit to generate anticipation and predictability. Why? Because they're facing a boring commute. Therefore, they changed that. And because they were in the hurry, they moved the dispensing machine in front of the counter and sell customers prepaid cards so they can quickly cash out. And as a result, suddenly, when they applied this jobs to be done theory, or the disruptive marketing theory, the sales of the milkshakes skyrocketed. And that was very, very interesting. So now that is a bit too much now, but basically you understood that, that scenario here. Yeah. What can we do in order to foster this climate of disruption or climate of innovation, to have more entrepreneurs inside the organization? Basically, it's only going to work through the change of culture, through the corporate culture. And we talked about that. What are the elements that an innovation culture calls for? First of all, you have to completely focus on the customer. So Professor Kotler calls it CIB, customer is boss. And all things a company is focusing on must start from a superior customer experience. And companies need to be agile and flexible, and they need to remain agile and flexible, not to be at one moment in time when they start a business. For example, now, of course, also Netflix, Google, all those innovative companies, they are challenged as well, because if a company is successful, I was mentioning that before, look at the penguins, and they get the best fish, and they have a high market share, and they fail to innovate, they fail to be agile, they fail to be flexible, they fall behind. We're living in a world of constant uncertainty, in a VUCA world. We've talked about that a dozen times already, I think. We have to deal with that. We always have to play on the offense instead of the defense. Offense means we have to skate where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is. We have to anticipate change. We have to get ahead of society changes. Get ahead of society changes. That is the expression of drucker. And in order to do that, you don't have to be afraid to cannibalize your own business. That is also what a lot of companies are afraid of. If they are successful in pursuing a certain kind of business model, they stick to it too long. Going back quickly to the slide, and we discussed that before, the quote of Tim Mannon, the head of the former head of the printer division at 𝗬𝗵𝗴𝗃. Where is he? Where is Tim Mannon? He's somewhere here. I'm pretty sure. Here. I love him. I love him. I love the quote. The biggest single threat to our business is to stay with a previously successful business model 1 year too long. So that is what's happening too often to companies. They're successful with the iPhone, for example. They stick too long to the old iPhone. So they stop innovating. It's rather incremental innovation, so it's not a big innovation anymore, and suddenly there are new competitors coming up, aggressively targeting the same kind of market, attacking the incumbents, so the traditional companies in that market. What else? Going back to the slide here, looking for that. Yes, yeah, the last slide. And never disrespect new or small players. Never disrespect small or new players. So in a lot of instances, big companies, incumbent companies, they are sometimes arrogant because they have a high market share. They are very powerful. They have a high customer base and customer loyalty. But then a new kind of company is coming up and challenging the incumbent with a new business model and with an attractive price. And the traditional companies, the incumbents, they don't take the new competitor seriously sometimes. Sometimes they're also acquiring that, so they're doing M&A to buy this kind of a corporation. But in a lot of ways, they're overlooking the new kind of competitors until it is too late and until really their existence is being threatened. Look at, like I said, look at the story of Blockbuster and Netflix as a perfect example. Thanks very much. I end the recording here. I stay in the line, of course, to answer the questions. I'm also showing a short video. We cannot record that for copyright reasons, but thanks very much for your attention, and see you for another video next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.